All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is E.R. Anderson. I am the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is the nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. So glad to be here with all of you in person and all of our friends virtually online. It is great to start off the new year with all of you. This is our first real program of the year, and I can think of no better way than to be in the company of poets. I always feel like poetry is sort of like the balm against the darkness. And so that is literal and metaphorical right now, and we need it. We need y'all. So when Sam and Maya got together and were like, we want to do a poet's potluck. It was like, this is or I don't even know. Maybe that was your idea. Maybe. I love it. We're going to hear more about whose idea it actually was. It was such a welcome feeling. So I'm so glad. I wish that all the people virtually could come eat with us, but I'm glad that all of you who are physically here will get to enjoy that part. So we're going to have some incredible poetry first, and then afterwards, those of us who are physically here will hang out and get to know each other and eat and being in company. But we first will enjoy this feast of poetry. And I am going to introduce Sam. Samuel Ace is our beloved curator of Meet Me There. Meet Me There is a monthly series that has been just a gift to us for the last 2 years now. Yeah, time flies. It's an intergenerational poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction experience, and it explores genre and gender boundaries. So, Sam, I'm going to ask you to come up and introduce Maya. Just say hello for Maya. Or you don't want to do that? I can do that. Do all the bios. Got it. All right. So Maya Marshall is our opening poet. Maya Marshall is a poet, essayist, and editor. She is the author of All the Blood Involved in Love and the chapbook Secondhand. Marshall co-founded Underbelly, the journal on the practical magic of poetic revision, and serves as poetry director for Haymarket Books and as a program consultant. I'm not going to read all the places that your poetry is sponsored by. It could be more. We would like more people always to pay Maya to write, but they're missing out. But it's some good places already. Her poems and essays are published widely in various publications, including most recently Prose to the People, which is an awesome book that we are very proud to carry as well, which came out in 2025. It's a great book. Our co-features this evening are Gabrielle Calvocoressi. Yeah? Okay. Gabrielle is the author of poetry. Calvocoressi is the recipient of numerous awards and fellowships, including a Stegner Fellowship and a Jones Lectureship from Stanford University, a Rona Jaffe Women Writers Award, and Prime Ranieri, among others. And there have been published and in numerous magazines and journals. There is much more to say, but we're so glad that you're here, Gabrielle. And last but not least, a 2020 Guggenheim Fellow, Brian Teare, is the author of 7 critically acclaimed books of poetry, including Doomstead Days, winner of the 4 Quartets Prize. His most recent publications are a diptych of book-length ekphrastic projects, including Queer, Abstraction, Chronic Illness, and Collage. The Empty Form Goes All the Way to Heaven, and Poem Bitten by a Man, which was winner of the 2024 William Carlos Williams Award. A selected essays textual preference will be out from Nightboat Books in 2027. After over a decade of teaching and writing in the San Francisco Bay Area and 8 years in Philadelphia, Brian is now a professor of poetry at the University of Virginia and lives in Charlottesville, where he makes books by hand for his micro press, Albion Books. So welcome to you all. We're so glad that you're here and so glad to have everybody watching online with us. Yes. So let's get right into it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming out. I always do a short, introduction. Hi, thank you, ER, for just reading the bios. And, I want to contextualize the work. And I love the fact, I always pair or now triple folks together. And so it's just really my pleasure to be here. And thank you, everyone out there in the ether for joining us. We've just come from a vigil honoring poet Renee Nicole Good, the woman who was shot and killed by ICE on Wednesday. Good was a poet, queer poet at that, and she was chosen by queer poet Rajiv Mohabir. Here and our wonderful opening poet, Maya Marfa. Meet Me There at Charis is a monthly reading series featuring work by queer and trans writers who are bringing new books and creative energy into the world. And tonight, a special evening. Not only are we here in person, but we're joined by our far-flung people out there who are streaming in tonight. But we're also going to be followed by a potluck meal where we will eat together with the poets and in community and continue to talk, listen, and make new friends, simply be with each other. Something very necessary with the constant onslaught of transphobia and the brutal attacks, murders, and incarceration of immigrants. Really anyone who's not white, and the unrelenting and daily cruelty of our current government. We're eternally grateful for the existence of Charis Books and more, and all independent bookstores in the face of increasing surveillance, censorship of speech, and the policing of gender. I want to especially thank Abeyo Jamaica Tisdale, Charis's programming. I always call her the programming director because she does so much to help bring these events to fruition, as well as E.R. Anderson, who we just heard from, and the entire Charis staff. If you haven't done so already, please check out the Charis website where you can buy books by tonight's authors and all of the Meet Me There authors, and where you can view the event calendar. There is something happening here almost every night. And like tonight, almost all the events are live streamed and recorded, whether in person or online. A link will be posted in the chat to a YouTube playlist that contains recordings of all the previous Meet Me There readings and all the events, almost all the events that have happened here at Charis. The series will continue through June. More information will be forthcoming soon about our next reading on Wednesday, February 26th. It'll feature two trans poets, Noah Michaela Fields and her debut collection, also out from Nightboat, and Ricky Laurentis and her National Book Award longlisted second collection, Death of the First Idea. That'll be virtual. And then on March 18th, it'll be an in-person reading. Come out and hear trans poet Trace Peterson, also celebrating her long-awaited second collection, The Valleys Are So Lush and Steep, along with local trans poet and translator Isidoro Saturno. In April, again, virtually, two fiction writers, the incredible Rebecca Brown and Jordy Rosenberg, both out with new books this spring. There's just a lot to be excited about. As you can see, we as writers are still writing despite the forces of repression around us. If you're familiar with the series, I've always chosen to pair two writers, or in some cases like tonight, three. And then lots of variables go into those choices, not always with a huge amount of forethought, but tonight I'm always interested in how the writers who appear on a given night speak to each other. In reading these new books and reviewing their older work, I found myself so grateful to think about tonight's poets in conversation with each other. As you know, as we've just said, tonight, as I began to write this introduction, the news came through social media that one of us, a queer poet, was killed on the streets of Minneapolis by a militarized and out-of-control ICE. To say that this was inevitable, given the recklessness of the current administration, almost seems to minimize what happened, making it a one-off, an aberration, but we know it was not an aberration, nor was it a rarity. It has happened countless times before. 5 years ago, on the same Minneapolis streets, George Floyd was murdered. Protests happened, voices were raised, poetry was written by so many of us, but the march of reactivity, acts of hate, and the virulent violence in the persistent reenactments of power keep multiplying. Do we just go on as if this is a normal night? Of course we can't. We never really can. We need to act, to write, to speak out loud, to listen, to speak again with our skin sacks, as Gabby calls our bodies in The New Economy, her newest book, in contrast to or in concert with what she calls our light bodies, as Gabby also calls bodies filled with light and awe. We break bread together, like tonight, as long as we can. And I thank you, Gabby, as I understand it, Maya, for conceiving of these potluck evenings. This is the first of what I think will many, yes? All over the country. Yeah. Throughout Gabby's work, there's an awareness that we are never far from despair and death, and yet we are also never far from light. The two states, she insists, exist at the same time. From the poem, Light Body, Cistern Be Gone, from the place you almost destroyed, Gabby says, all our light bodies come to the party, gleaming. We let down our furs and suits of armor. We glistened. We were light as the transparencies our teachers used in school. Our brightness lit the river, landing. Not a single light was needed in the houses. We were the light. Throughout the new book, the skin sack roams the world, and yet it's often filled with light. The light body is not all radiance. It's perhaps more the karmic body, love, illness, deep loss, forgiveness, desire, and great beauty. Gabby does not shy from naming it all. Last night, my child, I have a 4.5-year-old, woke in the middle of the night with some kind of night terror. I shouldn't say woke because they didn't really fully wake up. They seemed to be imprisoned as if it were real, and at first refused to be real. After a short time, my child's terror seemed to subside, and I could slowly and gently reach out for them, take them in my arms into the rocking chair, and rock them until their nervous system realigned and calmed, and sit rocking with them until they fell into a more peaceful sleep. Why do I bring this up? Because I read The New Economy and Maya Marshall's All the Blood Involved in Love, and reread Brian's poem, Bitten by a Man. I kept experiencing the terror of certain realities and possibilities. The terrors are spoken out loud and not shied away from. But at the same time, I also strangely felt calmed, not unlike my child in the rocking chair. Through these works, I could stare at the terror and at the same time be calmed by the knowledge that I was not alone in feeling them. I was held by the saying, by the actual saying out loud, reminded of the light, reminded of love. Images of vessels, empty and full, kept appearing before me as I read. This is literal, as so many of the poems in Gabby's The New Economy are notably cisterns, the simple definition of meant to hold water or other liquids. But in Gabby's poems, grief and light, pain and well-being, sound and soil fill those amphoric spaces. In Brian's work, too, the vessel becomes the space of the canvas as filled by Agnes Martin and Jasper Johns, the vessel of the body in pain, in illness, in desire, the vessel of the notebook filled or not by the poet. Brian himself writes in his previous book, Doomstead Days, quote, extinction follows us, whether we mean it to or not. We are the point, the lever turns into a fulcrum. In Poem Bitten by a Man, Brian asked a question which seems to resonate throughout the entire book. What's the event that bisects a biography, after which nothing is the same? What's the shape of the moment when you lose everything except your life? In part, he tries to answer this question by looking at Agnes Martin's her writings and biography, her thinking as she creates her drawings and paintings, in contrast and in concert, organized by collage of images and ekphrastic poems. Brian also considers the work, writings, and biography of Jasper Johns, and in turn reflects back on his own life, the intractable present of illness and pain, the loss of a relationship, the act of writing itself, of gathering, of filling notebook after notebook, again, a kind of cistern. And then opening for us tonight is poet Maya Marshall. She tells us, quote, "A vulnerable life leaves room for love." And throughout Maya's work, that vulnerability is also a kind of vessel filled with all of its potential and refusal. As such, Maya lends us guidance about how to live alongside the violence of both the present and the past. In a poem titled Recovery, she says, "If it's recovery you want, go to the night. You are 5 or 6, go to the night and grab your mother before she hits the wall." And then further on in the poem, she counsels us, or recover, as in to pull from wreckage. Go to the night you remember and pull the child from the bed. Over ice cream, tell her. They're just a possibility, not a rule. None of this is a curse. Then hand her a kazoo. Tonight, I want to press that kazoo and its music back into our poets' hands for us all to hear their guidance and their songs. Please welcome Maya Marshall.
Hello, dears. How are you? Good. Woo. A little bit rested here at the start. Yeah, good. I'm gonna try to get comfortable. This all right? Easy to hear me? Easy to hear me? Excellent. I'm not a loud woman. I'm gonna read some poems, but first, thank you for coming on the internet and with your bodies. Gabby, thank you for inviting me. Ryan, thank you for coming with me. Sam, thank you for your thoughtfulness and bringing us together and spending time with our work and having them talk to each other. Those of you who came to the vigil, thanks for showing up. It's not everything, but it is something to show up and spend time without a third-party intermediary. You know, they're trying to, well, that sounds conspiracy theoretical. When we use apps instead of like stopping by each other's homes, we're letting someone else mitigate our relationships. And that makes it easy to forget old systems, like remembering each other's phone numbers, which makes it harder to reach one another when we really need it. You know, there are countries where they simply make just turn the internet off. Well, what happens then? If there's some sort of, you know, war on the people being waged by the state. Okay, I brought a bunch of stuff. I'm going to read some of it. This is my book, All the Blood Involved in Love. 10 years ago, we had this same president. He's been impeached twice. It's like in remarkable health for someone who is so spoiled. The central question of this book is, do I want to have children? What does it mean to be a woman who's not a parent? Lots of things. I answer it several ways. There's a lot of deep desire to be complete, and there's a notion that a woman is complete if she has a child. But then you have to live in the world with it, with just a piece of your heart roaming free. The Lavender Menace was this group of people in the women's movement, this like brown queers who apparently were some sort of distraction. So I'm just going to take that back. Lavender Menace considers adoption. I'm so American, I close my ports of nourishment with a bit of bread, a bourbon, a burrito bowl, a nipple, a penis. I take in and in like oceans, our landfills. My belly and arms swell, striate like felled logs. Consider the common inclination to love into submission. Hush, baby. I do this for myself when I masturbate to fall asleep. I have been a woman for some time now. A uterine cavern, an acute sense of danger. I want to be a mother unlike my own, and I am ashamed to think, I think, so little of her resilience, her desperate love of me. I do not want to bear a child because I do not want to feel never alone. I'm so American. I dream of children discarded. What happens to a child detained? How many can I be a home to? I'm going to read the last poem in this book last, but I'm going to read 2 new poems that are not yet in a book. Because we're getting together to be together. Because when we get together, we start to trust one another enough to plot. And I think that's a good idea. I think this is a good time for plotting. Maybe before you leave here, you let folks know what other things you're doing, right? Reading is an action, but it's supposed to lead to thinking, and thinking should lead to more action. And then, right after you do something, but what are you doing? Maybe tell somebody before you leave and let them know where they can come meet you. Thanks for meeting us here. I had this friend that I loved when I was in college, and we came from very different worlds. He's a Midwestern, raised by a pastor, very white, went straight to the military after high school kind of fella who really liked the far side and stealing all of his textbooks. And I was like, skip high school to go to the bookstore and the museums person and like do well on your SAT and then move to a big city and feel urban. Black girl raised by a Black radical woman. And we were not very good for each other, but we were often good to each other. And then we did this thing. We watched this movie, High Fidelity. It was very hip of us, And in that movie, it's like you have to be of a particular disposition to believe that you're going to be alone forever at the age of 26. We were of that disposition. We were not yet 26. He kept believing it, and then felt a really particular kind of alone, and then he left. So on the 11th anniversary, I get older and you stay dead. All the books are about suicide, that little flirt. Does grief beckon it? Dolled up in chic black and brightly colored flowers. It takes work to end a life. Loose ends tied or not. The body wants to live. Who wants to fight? Not me. I don't want death, not really, though I wonder what you found on the other end of the rope. A cough, probably. As I was saying, I choose to live, but the other side is curious to me. I want to peek into the future where the man I've married is a different man, and I am a better woman who loves him the way he is and who loves me the way I am. The story of the future keeps me hopeful. Hope may be all there is besides the elements, the laws of physics, chocolate. Yes, the future is a lure. The present is full of broken structures and dead soil. The spirit is real, so why not an afterlife? Maybe the thing is to try to keep someone else alive. That kind of kink makes me feel desperately wanted, but then I hate to be burdened with insatiable need. No dependence, I say on my tax forms. And the desperate stink as much as the fearful, it's in the sweat or the burnt flesh. This is morbid, I know, but I'm after truth. I started seeking it, and as starving as a dog, I will have my bone. A clear path satisfies me almost as much as stable ground. That's the truth I thought was real. Stability. But myths are as good as truths if a group believes them. God is more an organizing principle than a nightlight or a mighty immortal. Maybe the light in the dark is keeping someone else alive. Not forever. Nothing lives that long, but for a while longer here on earth. Not just in memory, like you with your bird nose and overbite next to me in a bed surrounded by books we love, but in corporeal form, here, on this beautiful, burning earth. Heaven, here. Serving is an idea of heaven, no? Everyone who's beyond the world of living, sitting in a circle, feeding one another with 6-foot spoons. That's what I remember from church. Hell is every dead person sitting in a circle, each one trying to feed themselves with a 6-foot spoon. Starving. What was the last thing you ate? Who fed you? I didn't set a timer. We're doing all right. I'm going to read this poem about being at a poetry reading. I'm going to read a poem about being in the library, and then I'm going to read a poem about being hopeful. And then I'm going to listen to Gabby and Brian be loving and brilliant and funny and surreal, and outside, somehow bringing the outside all the way in, into the spirit, into the heart. A knife is when you cut with it. Communion is when you give of your bodies to one another and then are saved. To make one, you must first open your ears, then your mouth. Conversations go on behind faces drawn shut to the cheek. Phatic goods flutter up and down the auditorium walls. Birds or whales. What would we say to the speaker who says, "How y'all doing?" If not, good, or cool, or cry easily in this space where eyes hold a gaze without damning. Only a featherweight look of attention, like a bird on a leaf, no, smaller, a fly. How light can be thrown off quick as the flip of a page, a flap. It was real, and then it ended. The gathering of humans in the room to celebrate hypnosis, our communal delirium, a poem. I had a feeling. It was the shape and texture of an orange. The orange wrapped in gold foil has the taste of the juicy thing, but it was tempered and painted in candy orange like the melting sunset. Inside, thin as a thumbnail, crisp enough to make a knuckle crack. Sound lay a sphere of chocolate there. See? You taste a chocolate orange, and your mouth waters at the memory of the pulpy, tender bite. We were in reverie together in a room. But the dream was not candy. It was safety in numbers. In the midst of a creeping civil war, there we were, brains tuned to the frequency of the envoy, the ode to the sacrifice of a forearm to cooking grease, leaving the circle of the crownless regions, carrying before each glowing heart a memory a joke, a betta fish, felt to me like ending a seance. Communing with the spirit paused the porous channel, constricted, it was real, and then it ended, and I could not take it with me. Behind our eyes, on the wings of the flock of birds flapping up into the auditorium air and out the doors to the hallways, out to the outside air, the conversation traveled on our thoughts to our next sentence as the conversation transformed through fluid into air, into water, and suddenly all of us fish. Well, libraries are important. We're trying to figure out where to put all of our money. I feel like this is the time to protect PBS, the library, the truth. In the library, binders full of world news line the shelves outside the public study. The talklessness here stills my restless nerves. Green carpet and public servants, the unhoused, and other studious neighbors nap or read or watch their stories, file their taxes. We chew through time amid gold wastebaskets. West tells us justice is what love looks like in public. A corpus of poets has yet to offer a satisfactory definition of love. Some abusers say love explains the bruises. There are, of course, real love bites. In bed this morning, my love gently bit my fingers. I took his cheek between my teeth. That's real, private. The archive outside my window keeps world facts on file because the fact is pendulums swing back. The archive keeps the past real, real as the sign on the front door. Only 2 bags the size of a carry-on are allowed. The woman asleep in the lobby rests her head against a roller bag. Libraries welcome our tired, our poor, our huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Down the staircase, children read pop-up books in primary colors. They grow while their mothers, aunties, and them pack and unpack plastic bags of bags and papers, last handmade cards, copies of ID, candy wrappers, and discharge papers, and this space of potential, of refuge, of memory. You know this poet, Jericho Brown? Yeah, he's one of the best among us, truly. And he made this form called a duplex. So this is a duplex. You should look it up. The form, not this poem necessarily. The big water. I want to say yes to the sea and live with the knowledge that I am small. I live with my knowledge, small despite my good learning. The truth is hard. With all my costly living, truth is still hard. Sober, I find my mind in disarray. To save my life, I undress this disarray. Fear babbles beneath. Terror cannot protect. Terror cannot protect like anger does. And a vulnerable life leaves room for love. A vulnerable life leaves room for you to love yourself enough to lose someone. To love yourself enough to lose someone is to become the open sea, not the estuary. Thank you.
You know, we're just going to go one poet to the next. I think Brian here, our wonderful Brian here, is up next. Thank you, Maya. That was, can we have another?
Hi, everyone. This is a little, I'm really honored to be here. I'm honored to read with Maya and with Gabby and to be here under the auspices of Sam and of Charis. I grew up, you cannot hear it in my voice, but I grew up in Alabama, West Central Alabama, and also went to college there. And so Charis was like the very first feminist space I like ever was in. I mean, other than my own body, but I didn't quite know that yet at that time. So it's also, I mean, it was in a different location then, but it's also just so amazing to be reading here in this really important place that's just made so much possible for people over decades. And lovely to be reading to all of you. I am going to read two poems. Poem Bitten by a Man is a long kind of collage, multi-genre, hybrid genre jam. It came about because the Philadelphia Museum of Art asked me to write poems in response to a retrospective of the painter Jasper Johns. And to be honest, I gave no fucks. I didn't really, I like knew who he was. I was like, oh, the flag guy. Yeah, whatever. But I was a little flippant about it, the way sometimes we are. I wasn't very generous. The way sometimes we aren't. And I also I just didn't understand his work. I hadn't spent time with it. I knew nothing about him. And like so many projects, like once I really got into it, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. I mean, problematic, complicated, but really interesting. And so I wrote then a whole book. He lived a few blocks from Agnes Martin, who I'd already written a book about, so we're in dialogue with. So she comes back into this book. I am not, though I don't know how she would feel about being read about in a feminist space. She was a little bit resistant of labels, any labels. But I am not going to read about her. I am going to read two of the poems that are directly ekphrastic poems about flag paintings of Johns's. If you don't know those paintings, how many of you have kind of seen them? You know, he's very famous for when he was a very young man, he literally copied the design of an American flag and but as a painting that sort of took up the whole canvas. And a little Warholian, maybe, in terms of is it a soup can? Is it a painting? Is it a flag? Is it a painting? Provocative, perhaps. Is it camp? Maybe? Is it a flag? They're tonally really hard to read. And then he was very cagey about whether he was serious or not, what his intent was. So I'm going to read two of these, and then I'm going to read a poem that kind of unspools from thinking about citizenship. So this first one, and just to give you, I'm not going to talk much more than this, but the way he made them is that they're actually layers of newspaper with wax over them and then painted on top of that. So they're actually collaged. And if you see them in person, you can see little words sticking out of the paint. You can't really in reproduction, they just look like flags. But when you get really close to, and for those of you who love visual art, when you see them in person, you're like, oh shit, this is a different trip, actually. I thought I was on this very boring journey with you, and then you get up close and you're like, whoa, texture, whoa, this is why, so different. So I did have this really physical, exciting sort of response to actually seeing them in person, and then also then reading about how he made them. I was like, oh shit, this is real different. But you'll also see my ambivalent response to some things. So I'm going to read these two. This one is Flag, 1954 to 55. To read a painting, to read a page, is to live overlapping moments flattened on a plane. A site of love and aggression, every object of study, a fantasy object that survives, the inevitable reader who says, "Hello, dear other, I destroyed you. I love you." A technique of individuation and an inescapable condition of cultural production. To paint a flag means design's taken care of, John says in 1959. It gives me room to work on other levels. Which other levels does he mean? Critics ask for decades. The commonplace is a painting, its affect flat as a slap. It's the military application of visual techniques for focusing desire or aggression, an affront to certain histories of art, graphic design, nationhood. And aren't there other levels? I ask the flag as I pull back the bedsheet beneath the layers of newspaper and tinted wax and lie down. Not really collage, a critic says, not really encaustic. The dream of a former soldier with a new boyfriend and an estranged alcoholic father dead the day before his first show. The flag's a fantasy of love and destruction, emblem of everything conflicted inside him. The flag's an affect, wide as migraine, debilitating and interesting to lie down inside. And I'm really interested in thinking with queer ancestors and elders, even if they're disappointing, and sometimes specifically when they're disappointing. So this is a little about that. This is also a bit of an elegy for the critic and theorist Lauren Berlant, who passed away, who is a really brilliant thinker about American identity and queerness and disappointment. This is called White Flag, 1955. The flag's an affect, white as migraine, debilitating and interesting to lie down inside, the surface churn of pigment and wax, and figure how I feel, beginning with structure, a layer of paper and cloth collage over stretched sateen, sensual bedclothes of a rough fuck, paramnesia streaked with semen, the way sexuality hooks up with national fantasy, queer, and visited by crippling symptoms in the visual field of citizenship. I've been here before. As a boy, I earn a badge of merit, learning to handle the flag correctly. It takes a long time to remember all the rules, to fold and store it properly. It's the gentlest I have seen the white fathers who teach us, who take more care with that fabric than they do with a sissy, afraid of their Cold War masculinity, indifferent to their curriculum of flags, targets, and maps. I fashion a passionate impassivity in the locker room a lot, like Jasper Johns, his ready-made images. I like about them that they come that way, he says. I am very stupid, politically, actually, he says. Pretty much like a jockstrap, holding state knowledge, a sight of the full coming together of violence and reason. Dear Johns, thank you for the headache. I hate your archive. A faggot has no true flag. Glad there were a little bit of laughs. Jockstrap simile. When I wrote it, I was like, oh, I love this. All right, so then I'm going to read a very different poem. This is called A Stranger is an Animal Who Doesn't Sing. And it's kind of just a long skinny, kind of James Schuyler, Eileen Myles kind of vibe. And, you know, I will give you a little background, which is I was trying to learn how to take care of the birds in my yard, and I noticed sparrows were nesting in a bird box. And so when I was at the bird store, which is like a real demographic, but when I was there, that demographic was like, you have to stop them breeding. Those sparrows, they're invasive. You need to start tearing out their nests. You need to they lost it. And it was really, I teach environmental humanities and ecofeminist poetics, and also, so I was like used to the discourse around let's critique invasive species, et cetera, and the overlap between xenophobia. But I knew it more as like a theoretical argument. I'd never seen a white person in the passion of like, the like kill, and it's also because they're English sparrows, which is what she said, not house sparrows. So I was also like, whoa, and we're getting rid of the English? Like, I was like, this is so polyvalent. It's breaking my brain. But then I started actually, because I am the person I am, I started doing research, and this actually has an insane history. This enmity against the sparrow, which even created a moment in our history called the Sparrow Wars, which is real and legitimate, actual history. So you will learn all of this in the course of this poem, which is, so that it's that kind of poem. It flows and goes all over. So just like John Cage is in here, there's like a lot. So just go with it. A stranger is an animal who doesn't sing. It has an epigraph from Yanis Ritsos, translated by Spring Ulmer. We read our history clearly in the flight and cries of the bird. When it is time to study hatred, again sparrows gather bicker in the forsythia. I tend the life of the mind, its leafless thicket, a tangle of vines, other voices live in. I think. If I transcribe enough sentences in the notebook, I will find a form that has a hate I can tolerate. My first teacher of poetry, this is a problem with double-sided, liked to quote Lowell, pity the monsters, which pissed me off. It was the 90s. My lover was dying of AIDS. Too bad, he's going to hell, my mother said, with all the others. I loathed pity and monstrosity as discourses about politics, exerting power over who lived and who died, who was mourned and who deserved it. By decade's end, I earned 2 degrees in the literature of compulsory heterosexuality, and still don't know if that was shelter or injury or both. I still don't know what to do with words that draw calamity closer. As I write, I hear the house sparrows I was taught I had to tell apart from song sparrows, and the several finches who flock without much song. I was also taught to say hello without judgment to each thought as it steps forward, sheer meaningless there-ness amidst the mind's bare declaratives. Hello, now go, I write. I say to this midwinter fact of existing, as long as each moment presents what happens. Not so that I awaken to the excellence of this life, Yvonne Rainer writes, but so that I awaken to the ways I have been taught this life is excellent, just, and right. This is one part of the difficulty. Another part is the sparrows I was taught to keep from breeding. English sparrows, I was taught to call them invasive species who in one season produce 3 broods and outcompete cavity nesting native passerines who produce fewer. I was also taught to destroy their nests and bar the birdhouse entrance hole until a bit later in the season when bluebirds start nesting, which is what I did, despite believing passer domesticus, a blameless form the world thought to take and keeps on thinking beaks adapted to distinguish seed from hull, upper mandible, lower mandible. My mind grinds against itself, parenthetical, endlessly opening, continuous, shrill, monotonous, noisy chirping, reads one guide. Pretty shady for ornithology. Though David Allen Sibley writes in a tone I don't care for either, of monotonous, nearly identical chirps in the realm of emotion, house sparrows get a lot of hate and annoy people for not singing, like John Cage, who removed both melody and harmony from his music and wrote instead with structure and method, perhaps as queer as Zen gets, cheerfully severe. He asked listeners to face attachment to the pleasures of received form and adherence to convention by refusing them. Reviews reflect the fact some resented that antisocial turn. It was the Cold War, the Pink Scare. The category is straight people having feelings in the free world. The state spread isolationist affective textures through citizens who listened against otherness, vigilant the way they are today, no matter what, severely cheerful, cage enthused, that pure life expresses itself through structure, and wrote that everybody has a song, that is, no song at all. I am not so nice. What can I write about my past ethno-nationalist birdhouse phase? When bluebirds traded sweet, clipped whistles with their fledgling, I was not proud. I started to feel I had been taught to save blue bloods from what birders like to call little brown birds, and I totally did. I sit with this for a long time, by which I mean until it snows. For a long time is a phrase I love. Within it, I feel the world without a self falls into folds like the sheets in a signature in a book. All pasts collapse, together a past becoming my own. The way I read that it is true how sparrows were introduced to the US in Brooklyn, in Greenwood in 1852. But it is not true that the man, Eugene Schieffelin, who soon released more sparrows near his house in Madison Square, wanted to populate Central Park with every bird in Shakespeare's plays. An anxious nativist at the American Museum of Natural History made that up. The truth is just this: bird, some people liked or believed useful. Maybe they were kids in other countries and saw sparrows make dust wallows and loved the sight and brought them here without knowing much about them and found cheerful what another guide calls their incessant, tuneless cheeping. For 173 years, the bird has remained non-native, invasive, a flexible symbol, and a long series of constructions, government reports, scientific studies, satirical poems, moral editorials, and testy letters citizens once sent to newspapers to complain about, this is all literal archival language, immigrant finches, dissipated urban dwellers, rich in vices, wretched foreigners, feathered reprobates, lazy little louts, self-willed and violent, hard characters full of impudence and pugnacity, alien vermin, rowdy little gammon, disgusting exotics, fond of fighting and lovemaking, stormy and ignoble domestic tyrants, the little Saxons copulated freely and scandalized scientific men of the period, stopwatches in hand, watched 14 successive bouts of intercourse at a rate of 5 seconds per act with 5-second intervals between. They really did this. Outrageous data whose prurience helped fuel what historians call the Sparrow Wars, that were never really about birds, but homeland biosecurity. The little animal became a stranger, despite how like men are birds, wrote Whittier, thinking maybe about fighting or fucking, like scientific men. I was taught to be skeptical of equivalence between nativism and conservation, but what about the model bird law of 1886, promoted by eugenicist naturalists and passed by 10 states that legislated the slaughter of non-natives, or the Sparrow Exclusion Act, which, though it did not pass, was modeled on the Chinese Exclusion Act and argued this sparrow is to native birds what what yellow peril is to human immigration, the question, after all, is who is the enemy and who is not? The current reigning architect of genocide on television says they are animals. Like all previous reigning architects of genocide, performing the consoling fiction of fixed identity in the gender ideologue, lip sync, elimination, competition, banal evil. Invariably, whosoever a nation state calls a stranger, a nation state calls an animal, because the state can kill an animal without qualm. To live with wrong, genocidal men constantly talking, Isabella Hamad suggests we live between alignment and alienation, alike and unlike, never quite at home. In the Notebook, finding things out and changing with the needs of sense-making. Without linear evolution, its limitation is acceptance of whatever happens next. Unsymbolic, wintry mix falling here on the object realm of shadows cupped in snow, shifting in wind, ever intimate with the flock, shaking the bare sentences where, come spring, yellow will speak for itself. I look closely. I try to say the given name, the question being a short bib above white belly or a very streaky onesie, like that one, picking around in the leaf litter alone, because song sparrows only flock in fall. I did not know that. I looked it up. As I closed the book, the flock disappears into the dark, blocky paragraphs of the holly I want to write, the way they move, though I was taught in the mental realm, thoughts are clouds, the mind is water. I was also taught I could not move freely in a poem, because I'd learned to shape its music through exclusion. You couldn't write peanut butter to save your life, said my first teacher, and he was right. Though I did not want to sing, I wanted to think the way the world thinks itself being. One teacher might enforce tradition, another might bring a sword to cut off all concepts, pretty aggressive, to undo the habitual movements of the mind and release with mysterious precision an unknowing, worthy of this world, a tawny noise. The sparrow is not a parable, thinking animal, speaking animal, fond stranger waiting for spring. Neither of us will be singing. Hello is the end of the poem. Hello, now go. Thank you.
What on earth? Gabby.
Oh. No. Good night, everyone. It's quite enough of that. I get to be with all of you.
And we get to be with you.
I can't even take it. Hi, everyone. So wonderful to be here with all of you. Hi, everyone online. Hello, hello. So nice to see you. It is a dream of my lifetime to read at Charis Books. And so I just want to thank you so much. I did not grow up in the South, although I live in the South now, but certainly I'm thinking a lot about the Reader's Feast bookstore in Hartford, Connecticut, which was the gay and lesbian bookstore in my little town. That the first thing I did when I got my little Toyota Tercel, when I was like in high school and I could drive myself to work and school and stuff like that, I got in that car and I knew I was going to do it. The first place I drove was that bookstore. I did. I was like, here I come, Audre Lorde, I'm coming. And so it's very moving to be here and to be here with Maya and to be here with Sam and to be here with Brian and I, who have known each other, I mean, like our whole poetry lives. And there's just people I've known for a long time. I feel emotional. We really need places like this, don't we? We really do. I hope people will stay for the potluck after. It's true. I'm having potlucks all over the country. Come on and eat. Because I feel just like Maya was saying, right? Like, what does this barbarous regime want to do to us? They want to make us forget that we are neighbors and that we love and we protect our neighbors. What was Renee Nicole Good doing? She was doing the work of any good poet. She was observing. That's what we do. We observe. And she was being an observer. And so I hope I can go all over the country and I can have meals with people, because Maya is so right. Our phones, these apps, they bring us together in a lot of ways. I'm so grateful for this camera and for all of you who are here through the camera. But it is true that it's maybe at tables and at bedsides and in hospitals and on street corners and in our cars that we have a right to be in and put in reverse and then drive away. These are the places where we're going to also find and save each other. And we're going to do that in poems too. And so I'm just grateful for us all to be here. And I'm going to read a few poems, and then we're going to have a little Q&A. And then I heard somebody brought Hawaiian chicken. I don't know if that's true, but I'm living for it. It's also just that I'm always hungry. So it's like, what could you do, Gabby, to build community and eat? Renee Nicole Good is a beautiful name. And every day we get to read poems. We're so lucky. I'm 51 years old. I've gotten to do this for so long. How dare the state take a poet's right to spend their life reading poems away from them? This is to a dear friend who's alive. I miss him, though. This is to Oliver Bayes Bendorf. Yeah, Charis loves Oliver. Oliver? Oh my God. And then Gabby just completely fell apart. Well, that's that, everyone. I'm going to get in my Toyota Tercel and leave. Who am I kidding? I flew Delta, which is also a barbarous regime. Okay. Oliver, miss you. Would like to shoot some hoops with you. I'm also beginning a long journey toward my NBA career. Miss you. Would like to shoot some hoops with you. Don't have to be dead for me to miss you. Miss you. Would like to shoot some hoops with you. Ask you to teach me how to shoot buckets with ease. Wish you could show me your layup, your alley-oop, how to tussle without getting hurt. What chain are you wearing? You know I want one too, thick as licorice and gleaming. Wish you could help me be the flyest guy on the court. Don't bring anybody but your own. You're perfect. Wish we could wear matching basketball shorts, high five all the folks on the benches, trash talking bravado. The sun is so in love with us. I'm Greek like Giannis. My sneakers come from Mount Olympus. I'm the fiercest porcupine in the den. Pal, let's drink from bright fountains. Light drips from our stubbly chins. Miss you, barreling down the court, bouncing. Look at us living, imagine. I do. Oh. Yes, something fell. It's okay. Oh, cultivating voices, yes. We miss so many people. This is from my dear friend, Jenny Tonpahot, the great Kiowa scholar we lost in 2020. Miss you. Would like to grab that chilled tofu that we love. Do not care if you only bring your light body. Would just be so happy to sit at the table and talk about the menu. Miss you. Wish we could bet which chilies they'll put on the cubes of tofu, our favorite, sometimes green, sometimes red, roasted, we always thought, but so cold and fresh. How did they do it? Wish you could be here to talk about it like it was so important. Wish you could. Watched you on the screens as I was walking, as I was cooking. Wished you could get out of the hospital. Can't bring myself to order our dish and eat it in the car. Miss you laughing. Miss you coming in from the cold and one too many meetings laughing. I'll order already. I'll order 7 helpings, some dumplings, those cold yam noodles that you like. You can come in your light body or skeleton or be invisible. I don't even care. No, you have a long way to travel. No, I don't even know whether it's long at all. Wish you could tell me what you're reading, if you're reading. Miss you. I'm at the table in the back. I just thought, like, maybe I started writing these miss you poems. The thing that's remarkable is so many people have written miss you poems. And I just wish everyone would write miss you poems, because I think we could open the portal, is what I think. I think, like, if we just make enough miss you poems and also, like, have enough potlucks, then maybe the portal will open and we don't have to ask people to come back from heaven. Like, would my grandmother want to come back from heaven? I doubt it. Though she would probably come back if I asked her, but I won't. But I would like, just like for a minute, just like a minute for us to be together. No poems today because you're here. There's warm bread to be eaten with cheese and jam, small shops to walk into and look around, just for the pleasure of looking with you. We spend hours with the seed catalog, imagining a place bigger than ours. I buy more seeds than we'll ever be able to use, but here's hoping. Opening a package of seeds in 3 weeks, they came all the way from Canada. You'll say, this is too many seeds. Well, come on. Let's be here for the bounty. I can still imagine years of possibility ahead of us, a place with just a little more space for us to stretch out, a new economy, and yes, I know I can't drive at night, but who needs to go anywhere in the future? Maybe friends will come over. Imagine how nice to hear nothing but the stars. Take our imaginations from us. They're scared of us. Right? They're so scared of us. I can imagine it. You cannot take me. I swear. I'm so glad to be together. Steven Universe poem. My students taught me about students are great. They are my teachers. Wild strawberries as far as the eye can see, after Steven Universe and my students. I too have a red gem in my middle, Yes, a wild strawberry, far as the eye can see. It goes into me deeper than my bones or my organs or my skin sac. My red gem portals into the wheelbarrow of my deepest wants and memories, sitting on the roof of the garage, plucking berries first thing in the morning. Writing my first poem in the Scooby-Doo notebook I got at Ben Franklin. My red gem, my wild strawberry goes to the before I had a body in anybody else's mind but mine. It goes past the worn seat of the confessional to spring mornings on the basketball court, those sweet days without school or anyone. My gem, my wild strawberry, the sweetness so particular, nubbly, and barely able to be held between two fingers, but oh, the sweetness lasts all day. And yet I come from a lineage of destroyers. Mayflower cistern, I feel my pilgrimary. All day long I feel my pilgrim worry. Crude and unforgiving as the buckle on my boots. I mark the boundaries of the town, and then I build a fence. I build a pillory and a scaffold. I bring my gun into the forests and an axe inside me. I hurl my brittle body at the pines. I have a plan for them, a way to make them useful, which is God's compact with the world. Whatever does not welcome me, I tear asunder. Whatever welcomes me was mine to sack and bring to my knees. I give the gift of my hunger to everyone, and then I build a fence. The doe is certainly a sorceress. The sparrow was the woman smiling into the mirror of the well. What will I make of this country inside me? My pilgrim huddles in the corner of my heart, which I hate for its hopeful sounding, its unwillingness to know the truth of how broken and beyond salvation it is. It's that back and forth, you know. What power feels like, what it feels like to bully and be bullied. How do we think about that? I'm grateful to be here. I'll just read two more. This is for my dear friend Randall Keenan, who passed away. Randall, who I know Charis Books probably thinks a lot about. We all think about Randall. We love you, Randall. Jesse Norman's cistern, time to dress for fall. For Randall Keenan. The best of friends are sure to part one day. I can't remember who said it, but it's true. I wish the little church next door were there in person so I could hear them singing. I really do. I took my light body out to see and marveled at the white clapboard in the door, the red shingle roofs covered with moss since no one's here to see it, dust to dust or shingle to moss, the chimneys leaning toward the ground. We didn't know if they would like us, me and Angeline, little church next door in North Carolina, Pentecostal. I invited the pastor and his wife to tea, like my grandmother taught me. Turns out we like each other very much. Randall, I was supposed to write another poem, but let's be honest, we know I haven't written in 2 years, or maybe more. I've been trying. I've been taking the bus and listening to Jesse Norman. This is where I'm supposed to acknowledge the pandemic and how long it's been since I've ridden the bus. 2 friends have died in the last 3 weeks, and neither one from COVID. What a stupid sounding word to cram into a poem. One time my grandfather told me how Jesse Norman sang so well, that all the cast behind her was crying in, was it Vienna? I was really young. He used to drive me on the tractor while we listened to her singing on the outdoor speakers, and I'd think how nice it would be so good at something you'd make everyone stand still and cry for joy, for wonder. I've been trying what seems my whole life since I stopped writing to describe the feeling of waking up in the darkness to the feeling of my grandmother's mink coat tickling my cheek, her leaning down to kiss me after the 4-hour drive home from the opera. You would not tell me, think about the minks, though we would, of course, know about the minks. Time passes. If I said she smelled like Oscar de la Renta, you'd know just what I mean. And I could tell you how I sat behind my grandfather on the tractor listening to Les Troyens, and you'd know just what I mean. I'd say, what's happening now, at the top of my lungs, not knowing French, and my grandfather would say, everyone's dead but the ushers. Or, things are going from bad to worse. His voice rising over the engine, which he'd cut at just the right moment so we could sit in the stillness and listen to her, still alive. Cassandra on the wall, he'd say, and I'd say, what's that? And he'd say, that's when no one will listen. The smell of late autumn grass in my nostrils, I'd rest my head on his back. It must have been a replay or a recording because she sang that in winter. Or maybe it's been so long I just don't remember right at all. I used to sit on the bus and listen to Jesse Norman before the world got sick. But the world's always been sick. As long as I've known it, I mean. I texted, do you know when she sings that song, The Summer Knows? And you said, I do. I'd wait up as long as I could for her to come up and kiss me, but I was always surprised. Little minx. Horrible. But also I'd do anything, literally anything, to feel my grandmother kiss me again. I'd ask, was she wonderful? And she'd say, I'll tell you in the morning. I miss everyone and feel so lonely. It's like an empty opera house inside me, like all the chandeliers just shattered on the floor. I figured I'd just speak plainly. It's time to dress for fall. Also, I just want to say Jesse Norman from Georgia. I had one of the great moments of my life. I read that poem and somebody came to me and said, you know, Jesse Norman was one of my dear friends and she would have loved that poem. And then he said, and she loved to eat. I was just asked, like in a questionnaire that asked me things like, what is poetry good for? And I said, I don't know. It's good for things like this. I mean, I do know, but it's good for not knowing. But I said, and it also said, like, what artist would I like to like do things with? And I said, well, if it could be a ghost, I would like Jesse Norman to be the person like that I got to like make stuff with or do stuff with. But really, I just like to sit. Like if Jesse Norman's ghost would come to the potluck tonight, I'd be extremely excited. Miss you. Would like to take a walk with you. Do not care if you arrive in just your skeleton. Would love to take a walk with you. Miss you. Would love to make you shrimp saganaki like you used to make me when you were alive. Love to feed you. Sit over steaming bowls of pilaf, little roasted tomatoes covered in pepper and nutmeg. Miss you. Would love to walk to the post office with you. Bring the ghost dog. We'll walk past the waterfall and you can tell me about the after. Wish you would come back for a while. Don't even need to bring your skin sack. I'll know you. I know you'll know me, even though I'm bigger now, grayer. I'll show you my garden. I'd like to hop in the leaf pile you raked, but if you want to jump in, I'll rake it for you. Miss you. Standing looking out at the river with your rake in your hand. Miss you in your puffy blue jacket. They're hip now. I can bring you a new one if you'll only come by. No, I told you it was okay to go. No, I told you it was okay to leave me. Why'd you believe me? You always believed me. Wish you could come back so we could talk about truth. Miss you. Wish you would walk through my door, stare out from the mirror, come through the pipes. I would normally, I have a poem called Hammond B3 Organ Cistern, and so much of me wants to read that poem, but we have had quite enough guns in our life this week, and even this poem, which is a joyous one in many ways. There will be no bullets here tonight. But I just want to say the first line, which is, the days I don't want to kill myself are extraordinary. And I thank you all for being here tonight. I thank everybody. We're going to have time for questions, and we're going to eat and be in fellowship together. And I just could not, my eyes are so bad, but is that Claretta? Hi! Claretta's in the back. Claretta, who was the great managing editor on this book, and like there would be no New Economy without Claretta, because I don't know how to put a period anywhere. Claretta knows. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you. I love you, and I can't wait to answer some questions and then eat whatever food we have.
All right, so let's grab that one mic, and so we got. I'm actually gonna, yes, and y'all have one. And Gabby, if you'll actually grab the one that you were just using up top, and that'll be yours.
Yeah, so are there questions online?
Not yet, but how about we start with questions in the room? Does anybody, just so much love in the chat for all of you, and so many appreciations and hearts and all of that. Does anybody want to start us out with a question in here? Or
Everything shy.
questions for each other, poets on poets?
I like whatever this like sonic thing that's happening.
Yeah.
Here, like.
Yeah, I always think about this time as a conversation, and we certainly can do that over the food as well. And I thank you again for all of your words and language and being here tonight. I just feel so full right now. So we check to make sure that you're. Oh, am I still on? Oh, it's on now. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So I do think of this as a conversation. So if you have poets tonight, questions for each other or thoughts, I can start us off. And just as a thought, oh my goodness. Here's something I thought of, given everything that's happened over the last few days and throughout this year. Our work is obviously responsive to what's happening around us, but also our celebrations, our fears. Has the last year or 2 years navigating COVID, as queer poets, how do you think about visibility in your work today and visibility altogether versus 5 or 10 years ago?
What an amazing question.
be sure to use your mic for the recording.
I was just saying that's an amazing question. So I think I'm saying that in part because I'm like, wow, also a deep question that I feel like I don't have a ready answer for. But maybe as a gay man in my generation, I can say COVID, like everyone, I'm sure everyone in this room knows, like really recalled for me HIV/AIDS and being a young man during that time. Very young man, but I came out very young, and had to navigate that as a rural teenager. And I think I learned at that point, again, as like a rural youth, like this sort of double-edged sword of visibility, or that's how I felt about it at the time. Whereas like you were visible, but there was also a target on your back everywhere you went, which I know many people in this room feel all the time. So I did imbibe the politics of like, you have to be out, you have to be loud and proud. And also, I felt that came at an extreme cost at times. Like losing my family of origin, like all sorts of things. And then to be honest, like, you know, I think can sometimes fetishize community. But I also found it hard to find community too. That just because you're out doesn't mean like there's some magical unicorn land that just sort of is like, you're like welcoming you to be like, here's your card and like sign up and come to the potluck and do the thing. You know, would that it were like that. And I think I had that fantasy as a young person. So all of that is to say, I think the thing that I have reconnected to that maybe is related to your question is rage. Is like, I feel like one of the things that the generation of activists that I admired were really good at were rejecting respectability and rejecting a kind of an assimilationist agenda. And that those were the people I looked up to and really modeled my worldview. But I had to make a living. Like I had to make a lot of compromises, etc. And so I feel like there's something with the first presidency of this monstrous person and COVID, I think unhinged something in me of like returned me to a certain kind of rage and made me really think about, because we also like, for very good reasons, rage can be so destructive and is currently destructive, etc. But I was like, what's the constructive rage? Because it is also like the psychoanalyst Winnicott talks about play is both aggression and is aggressive and contains a kind of like constructive, destructive impulse. And so I was like, how can I connect with a rage that's constructive? And that also is connective as opposed to, alienating or isolating. So I feel, because the thing about children, which you know, watching them, they love destruction. It is so fun. And I feel like that is what I have connected to, is like a rage that is joyful and productive. And I think you can hear it like in those poems. Like there's the kind of irony and sardonic and like irritated, and like I'm really embracing being like a grouchy middle-aged person. You know, like there's just like, I'm going to connect with you because of our critiques and our annoyance and our dissatisfaction and I'm being a little flippant, but that I think is for me a thing that I have found transformative. I mean, I've been doing that work like in therapy and analysis and really sort of like making rage permissible for myself as well, something I can feel that I don't have to be ashamed of or afraid of, because I'm not using it to hurt other people. I'm using it to clear a space for connection, and for objection to violence and injustice. And that's a really different youth than the kind I grew up with. That was very long, but I hope that was something that people can resonate with or connect with.
Brilliant. As you have been since the moment I met you, when we were kittens. You know, it's interesting. I would say a similar thing in that, you know, in a lot of ways, I live in Durham, North Carolina, and moving to the South 14 years ago was one of the places. The South was the place that really taught me about joyful rage in queer community, right? And the South has taught me a tremendous amount about just like grassroots, boots on the ground, activism, every day, living your practice, being in community. I think another thing that I have really, when I think about queer visibility, I think about getting older, I think about like, what are my poems doing? What am I doing in my life? What am I doing in this body? Is also just like something I didn't think used to be possible, which was to have like my rage and my anger and equally have my kindness, you know, like kindness as what I think of as a kind of radical act. I grew up in a world where, I was saying this to you all earlier, like one of the, like in the town I grew up in for much of my life, like the thing that people were most infuriated by and probably in the end most terrified of was kindness. I mean, like in a body like mine, you know, like that I could somehow come into the world and still like I could get beaten up. I could get just like destroyed in so many ways. And yet somehow if I could still find that kind of kernel of kindness in myself, which was not the same as being nice to them. It wasn't the same as giving in, right? But was like, I really can like find that space. I can keep loving the world. I can keep walking out my door. And I think there was something also about that began to build into what queer experience looked like for me and in my body. And I've seen a lot of that in my life living in the South. And maybe some of it is also a kind of relationship to, you know, church can be a very devastating place for a lot of us, but I do think there's a way in which figuring out how to build communities of care, trying to build a kind of that spiritual space that maybe some of us really, really long for, that takes a kind of radical commitment to kindness, neighborliness, that also rage can be a big part of that. I don't know if that makes sense. Sometimes I say things that make no sense, but that I think for me, queer visibility as well. And we grew up in the same era at the same time. And I think saw a lot of the same things, not all the same things, but we overlap in many ways. Yeah.
It's on now. Yeah. I am 10 years behind you. I am a Black woman, and so I'm in that way always visible. My queerness is bisexuality, and so when I am partnered to a man, then I am a little bit more invisible. This is a responsive answer, but I'll probably say something also. Being angry is something all of us have a right to do justifiably all the time, but then we would not have room for, like if we were overwhelmed by it, we wouldn't have room for imagination to like make a new thing, make a different thing. 10 years ago when we entered the first version of this administration, you were asking about queer visibility in the last 10 years. So including COVID, including Trump 1.0. I might be misremembering, but Yeah, having grown up in the 90s and like come of age with an awareness of Matthew Shepard, like at my queer awakening, at my early teen moment while working in a lesbian owned cafe with all of the queers in my Houston town inside the Bible Belt and between two family friendly Catholic churches. Rage was a constant, but like hopefulness for care and making things together was also a constant. Having a space that was for us, where grown queer people were, was also a constant. I was a safe child, and as much as one can be safe. And in a safe household with with a parent who wanted most of all to be all the things I needed. We know that human beings can't be everything that the people we love need. But this question of queer community being a little bit fetishized, it's funny and accurate, but also when we talk about queer family, we're replicating some of the things that come in a mostly healthy household, like the willingness and ability to let each other be wrong and change and meet each other differently over time, and to be responsive for those needs as they arise. That's a thing that happened during COVID in a national way, a sort of mutual aid, a real awareness of the quietude that happens when we can't interact with our sort of those soft connections, the barista, the person who's your nod, hey guy on the bus, the sort of the people who are the fabric that we don't pay a whole lot of attention to. But also when we find every method we possibly can to connect with the people we most love, when we have Christmas on Zoom or whatever. Those are the things that stood out to me about visibility. Yes, we were angry. And those of us who are introverts were like, y'all not ready to be alone? This is the pace of my life. So I'm glad you're understanding, but let me help you. Let me prepare you for the walks in the forest preserve. You haven't tried my baking recipes? Like, we're ready. The introverts were prepared. Yeah, I think that the stories of shock played out the way that they typically do. And they stayed sad, right? There was this rise in the beginning of COVID, this rise in hate crimes and battering of old Asian women on the street that sort of has fallen out of the rhythm of the news and the discussions. And that's what happens every time the nation is surprised. Unfortunately, that's what will happen in a few weeks. Not just because of the strategy that is to like draw attention everywhere, but because we can only tolerate being shocked and enraged and at our fullest capacity for so long before we have to keep doing the business of living. So things get invisible and they become visible again. And rage subsides and then it rises again, and we always get to do the work of finding how to use it well. And using it well almost always means finding a way to connect with one another and help, because the structures we make and sort of plug and play to make profit don't serve us.
Thank you. Thanks everyone on that. I think we probably, with those beautiful comments and answers to that question, I think we're going to close out tonight right now and then go.
So hungry.
Yeah, we're so hungry. And I want to just thank everybody online. If you're still there, gosh, thank you for coming.
Hi, everyone.
And thank you, poets. Thank you, everyone here who's come. Please take care of yourselves out there and in here. Love you all. Thanks.
Love you. Night, everyone online.